to someone who's 90 that's still enthusiastic and grateful to be doing what's deemed impossible. Maybe with all due respect to the brilliance of their career counselors, they'll say, well, maybe I'll give it another 2 years anyway. And if that's the case, we will have all made a huge contribution. Because all we can do in a messed up world is just keep on trucking, keep on doing something beautiful. And remember that they tried to get rid of Rasputin, shot him, poisoned him, buried him, and he said, no, I refuse to go gracefully into that good night, sort of like Dylan Thomas's poem. And that's one of the things that we have to contribute to show all your listeners that if they dream of doing anything, they're probably on the right track. And whatever you do to pay your rent is incidental, has no bearing on your value as an artist or a person or anybody that could do anything. And to try to hang out with others who at least say hello or give you a smile without a can opener. And if you want to do something and you're told the demographics prove it's hopeless and you feel you were put here to do it anyway.
Sounds wonderful. And that's why this room is called Hangoutology.
I love it.
So we can reset the room every 15 minutes.
Well, that was from my statement, which was I'm a lifetime scholarship student in the University of Hangoutology. And in spite of my 7 honorary doctorate degrees, everything I learned is from hanging out with those who know more than I ever will and absorbing some of that and then try to share what you know with other people. Doesn't cost anything. You don't need a guru, a psychiatrist, or a dope dealer to feel good. You can just learn every day from anybody and everybody.
Yes. So you have 7 doctoral. Tell me, what are they? David, you have 7? Oh, you have 7.
What was that?
Your honorary doctorate, David.
Oh. Well, I can't, for any of your listeners, I can't sign prescriptions, which is why you can get an honorary doctor's degree and still be unpopular, because you can't help anybody that needs some drugs. Because I have a doctorate from Brooklyn College, which is really an honor. Right. And that was my most recent one. I got one from Hartford. Jackie McLean presented it to me. We played with Bingus. He didn't even know I was getting a doctorate. I have a great. And then I have one from St. Lawrence University and a whole bunch of places. Well, Beth College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Moravian University, and one out in Long Island. But mostly I told the people that's just because I was around long enough and somebody was interested. But the main thing is to try to be studious, because the really most important thing is to be a good student. And most of us who are at the University of Hangoutology are learning from others, just the way I was able to get in a Clubhouse. I followed her magnificent instructions, and all I needed for my tuition was to say, please, thank you, please, can you show me again, please, thank you, and can you show me one more time slower? So if you're a slow learner, that means you're on the right track because you want to get it right. And conversely, when you finally learn the routine, then you can share that information with others. So anytime they say you can become a great guitar player in 30 minutes, the chances are in 30 minutes you've got time to send somebody some money that ain't that great a player themselves. Because anything you do just takes time and doing it over and over. And Dick and Jane run up the hill, Bow Wow, Spot barks, and 2 and 2 equals 4. And you just start off with fundamentals, and you can learn. That's how I learned to write symphonies and play jazz and do everything, just by hanging out with people that knew more than me, that were at least figure, well, the guy's desperate, and he got good manners and really wants to do it. So the best people will show you incredible stuff if you know how to say please and thank you. I was brought up on a farm, and my father said, no, he said, if you ask over and over again, that doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you're intelligent because you don't learn it right. And farmers will show you how to do anything if you could say please and thank you and pay attention. And that's true with music, art, just about anything. Conversely, if you're on an airplane and say, well, man, the co-pilot just passed out and the hostesses don't know how to fly a plane, can you get up and fly the plane going through the mountains? Chances are you might say, I think you better get somebody else. Unless you have someone like the wonderful woman who works with you that can guide you over the earphones of which buttons to push, and then I guess you can do it. So best thing is, if you're not sure, confess that you really don't know how to do it and try to recommend someone who can, or ask somebody if you have time how to do something. And that's true with anything and everything. And then there's some people that won't show you anything because they're trained to feel that if they help out someone else, they're going to diminish themselves in the great race to get on top of the crap pile for 55 seconds. And that's okay too, but that's an overcrowded field in the non-growth industry. So try to hang out with people who are compassionate. And most of the best teachers are people that learned themselves. Larry Ridley, one of the great bass players and great educators, told me he was one of the guys that started off jazz education. And he played with Monk and Bird and Dizzy. And so he stopped going to those conferences because when all the people call and say, I'm Dr. So-and-so, a PhD in jazz, and start giving him a big lecture on stuff that he's already experienced, they don't know anything about. He finally, if they keep it up, says, excuse me, who have you played with? And after the dead silence, he says, I explained to them, I learned on the bandstand. So that's just a little note. And Sputnik, I want to say a big thank you to you for the fact that you go out on your bicycle and every single night, and even though you work for ASCAP, and I'm a BMI writer, you're not even supposed to talk to me. I've learned more from you. See, you help out more people than anybody. And Nenad, I met when he first came to New York the third week, and right away I knew this was some great guy that I wanted to hang out with and learn and enjoy the company of. So I'm with two people I really admire, and I'm glad then that you have a show and people can listen to all that you have to say. And I'm going to be quiet now and listen to myself.
Always with admiration, David. And the person who is moderating, or her name is Nidhi?
Yep, it's Nidhi.
Hi, Nidhi. With your good graciousness with David, would it be possible at some point to speak with his manager, Doug Yeager? Because I don't know if he's going to figure things out. I think he could also use this magic touch of yours.
Oh, sure. Let me know.
Perhaps we could give you his email, or there's some approach next week that we should have him on board. I just emailed him again to see, because David, wouldn't it be great to have Doug with us as well? He could speak a little bit about hangoutology.
Doug's stories are so incredible, even though he's my manager and I've known him for years before I ever dreamed of that. He starts telling stories and I forget what I'm supposed to call him about. He's so interesting. And a person that loves music, loves people who make music, loves people who listen to it, and a real gentleman in a time of swinish, full greed ahead. He's not like the Lenny Bruce imitation of the dreadful manager. He's someone that really cares about music and cares about people, and understands that there's a larger calling in life than looking in the mirror, which is to think about others too. And that's why he's a happy guy and why people love him, because he's really is a person that you can admire. And also, like me, he's from the analog era, the writing down on a piece of paper with a pencil on the back of an old wrapper with one of those big carpenter's pencils before they had adding machines. I remember that when I was a little kid. So, but it all comes out of the same place. And writing a symphony is the same thing. You just finally figure it out just by doing it.
David, the way the world is opening up now for live music, are there any developments these last few days? Are you hearing about gigs?
Every day. Every day. And you know, the beautiful thing, Spooky, and then I'll get off, is that, and I think Nenad would agree with this too, we were talking about it the other night, a lot of these younger folks, so when I'm 90, I'm speaking just about everybody I run into. I always hung out with the old guys, but now those old guys don't happen to be here at the moment because they're all in a great jam session in the sky. So now when I see all these younger people, real younger people, like in the high school in their 20s, their point of departure, where they're starting out from, is what all of us are finally figuring out ourselves. What is that Charlie Parker or even Bix Beiderbecke or the great guitar players like George Van Eps a long time ago, what they were doing. We're finally figuring out what they did. And here are these people who, you know, when we would Monk or Dizzy, I remember Dizzy was sitting one time, I've known since 1951, and I said, God, this way you voice those chords. And he looked up at me and he said, I'm a harmony freak. And when I heard Birth of the Cool, the Miles, and John Lewis and Lee Cotis, all of them, way back in 1949, I said, boy, that's like the Brandenburg concertos. They've got counterpoint, every line is perfect, but they're using a different language, and maybe you could use that in symphony music, and that was enormously influential to me as a composer, as a breath of fresh air. But now all this stuff, the younger folks, they're starting out with that knowledge, and they can go on YouTube, and they can watch, because music is visual as well as auditory, because people are playing it, and they got people doing it, with all due respect to synthesizers and all that. And when Jimi Hendrix played the guitar, he took electronics and showed that could be a tool of expressing one's self. So the electronics didn't dictate his guitar. He was having the guitar using that technology to express himself, making that a tool rather than something that you carry, a toolbox you carry around, but the toolbox tells you what to do. Now, all these younger folks, they're starting out with this so they can embellish and add to the vocabulary. And it's like learning more than one language. And then when you do that, then the language that you're born with, you can speak better and you can learn about other people. And this is the same thing with music. So I find out that the knowledge of all these young people, I heard that Emmett Code's little trio band, they play everything from the very beginnings of jazz up to stuff that's being done the day after tomorrow, and a ton of singers and players. And every time I go on YouTube, I hear and see something incredible of people, and I also see some of the people I grew up with and older people that I never really got to sit back and listen to 4 or 5 times in a row when they were in Europe or in Asia, where they really recorded and visualized, made beautiful films, and I could see what the heck they're doing. And this whole vocabulary and the whole thing of indie, where people don't have to have somebody in a polyester suit that never learned to sing and dance. They don't have the Philistines in control, where they have to somehow sneak something beautiful in anyway and pretend they're doing what they're asked to do. Rather than that, people say, well, since no one's going to really buy it, I might as well make a document of the very best I have to offer. And as a result, a lot of musicians are realizing, Jesus, we can actually do it better than those people that tell us how infantile we are. And that's a good thing. And it's wonderful to see this happening. And I'm sure that if they had any idea that the technology would be this valuable, they probably never would have invented it or made it available. And it's a blessing for all of us as a learning and a sharing tool. And I just wanted to say that. And programs like this are important, because then stuff that would never be on the radio or television, something that you can't pay or use, they used to call it payola, bribery, is another way. That's fine, I guess, if you're selling cars with no engines inside, or hot radios, or real estate that's going to go underwater. But for art, music, and recipes, dancing, singing, life, relations with other people, that ain't cool. That worthless, lying, shallow, disgusting crap is not really valuable to anybody, except for the crapologist who might be selling it and leaves town. And that's part of our society. We can't be judgmental of people that act that way, because that's the way we're all brought up, more or less, to be a successful person. The idea that not to build a better mousetrap or to do a good job, that's the way a lot of us were brought up. But the other approach was just to screw everybody, cheat, lie, and then leave before you get caught. I think we're seeing that's becoming very transparent. So music, which is done from the heart, built to last and to inspire and uplift, by definition, people who work in the music field, and that was a perfect example of that, and you are too, instead of being considered to be psychotic nutcases, dreamers with career death wishes and worthless, are becoming role models, because we're actually the people that try to do a good job and do better than is expected, and that's a good thing. So how's that for a long non-answer?
Just I want to say hello to Radoslav Lorkovic. He's here in speaker. But before that, before Radoslav speaks, I want to introduce you to my friend Jamie Cohen from Toronto, whom I met at Saturday Night Live decades ago. Just say a few words, Jamie, if you don't mind.
No, my pleasure.
Hi. Well, first of all, David, that was. I was listening and taking mental notes because that was it prompted so many thoughts in my own humble experience that really made me see the universality of of what you were saying. But Nenad has been a friend for decades, and we've collaborated. We speak regularly. I think he's one of the most magnanimous souls I've ever met as a friend and as an artist. So when he told me, I haven't been on Clubhouse that much. I've been in a few rooms over the last few months, but when he said that he had a call set up, a room set up, I think that's what you called them, with David, and he described a little bit about who you were. Even though I usually put my kids to bed at this time, I said to my wife that I had to find some time at the end of the day to be in the room of these extraordinary people. And so that's my little introduction.
Oh, how old are your kids?
8 and 9.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just out of curiosity, did they ever hear that Raffi song?
No, which Raffi song? I'll play it from.
There's one called Peanut Butter Sandwich Jelly with Jam, one for me and one for David Amram. And that came out about 20 years ago. And my kids came back from school, and I knew Raffi back in 1971 when I was a sub-host for This Country in the Morning, way back for CBC. Peter Zofsky was off that summer. Some of your grandparents probably remember that. Anyway, this guy named Raffi used to come down because Jack Elliott was in town, Rambling Jack, and he said, "Look, man, you're done your CBC program. You don't have any wife or kids." Which I didn't at that time. He said, "Come on, I have a cot in my room and hang out with me, and we'll play at the riverboat for 3 nights." Jack was so much fun, you couldn't say no to him. So I was having so much fun playing with him. And this guy, Raffi, came down every night, and he was a Jack Elliott fan, so we would go to his house and play all night, so finally his wife would get up to go to work, say, "Fellas, I think it's time for you to go to sleep." We go home and crash out to work the next night. Years later, I got married, had kids, and my children came back from school. They said, "Daddy, that guy's singing about you on the record." I said, "What?" He said, yeah, they got this song here. So they got me the record. I said, holy cow, so I called him Rafi. And I said, Rafi, how can I ever thank you? The only thing that ever has impressed my children was being on your song. And he said, well, Dave, he said, I couldn't think of anything to rhyme with jam. So I mentioned that because sometimes you can't really judge anything by the cover, but more like what's inside the package. And so I was very lucky to have that happen. But so many of the things in life that do happen are just a fluke of chance. I really don't have anything. But Rafi actually is one of the great children's advocates, which means he's an advocate for all of us because he really cares about that. Some people, are great idealists, supposedly, and then once they hit it, and he's turned down fortunes of advertising because he always makes sure that what they want him to recommend is not toxic and not explosive and not poisonous and all that kind of stuff. He's really one of the great people. And of course, he's from Canada. And when he came to Clearwater, he decided he wanted just to come back and he'd sneak in. And so he visited us at the farm and he came and played with us. And all of these women who were like really incredible, they become security guards and helped to run the festival. They were really on the case and didn't tolerate any nonsense. And when they saw Rafi, they all went, Rafi! 40 and 50-year-olds were all screaming because they remembered hearing and seeing him when they were 5 and 10 years old. And he's still just a terrific person. And Toronto, one of the great towns, all of Canada is just amazing. Et pour tous mes amis qui viennent de Montréal, je développe les gens québécois ont plus de les choses anglais, and they're both great, and it's a wonderful country. And the fact that you have a country where you can speak at least 2 languages and to declare allegiance when you become a landed immigrant, you have to celebrate your heritage from whence you came and enrich Canada by all of that. That's the only thing we have in the States like that is in New Orleans, where they have the go-bo philosophy of you contributing the best you have to offer to that go-bo pot, and in exchange you're beautified by the beauty of other people who put the best that they have offered into that great. Dizzy told me about that. We were on the way to Cuba 42 years ago. The gumbo philosophy, and I never forgot that. And I think you guys have that. And a lot of us south of the border are grateful and tried to catch up.
Yes. Jamie, are you located in Toronto or somewhere close?
Yeah, I'm just north of Toronto, so.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So Radoslav, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. So when you don't talk, everybody, when you don't talk, just use microphone so it will be better sound. But when you want to talk, just unmute yourself.
Yes. Okay.
So Radoslav, welcome.
Hey, this is amazing. I just climbed up a 300-foot hill at a beautiful lake outside of Spokane, Washington. Had an amazing swim and a kayak, so it's pretty awesome out here.
David, can you beat that?
Well, all I can do is to listen respectfully, and I don't think so.
Well, at age 90, we expect more from you, David.
I'll get David on a boat. I'll get him on a boat, no problem.
I love it.
He'd tear it up.
Jack Elliott was famous for that. One time we were drunk, we were going someplace. We were supposed to play a concert the next day, and he disappeared. And he said, well, it bounced out that boatyard. He was so fascinated. So I said, oh, that was the guy with the guitar. He went on our guy's boat. He liked it so much. And then he started playing the guitar. And they said, hey, we're taking off. We're going overseas. And Jack said, can I come along? And they said, yes. And I said, he's on the boat going somewhere. And he came back about 2 months later and said he had a great time. And if I ever come out to Spokane and go out on the lake with you, I promise to come back.
Hey, let's plan on that. I will promise you a good time.
All right.
and a great show as well. We can throw that in.
You play music as
Yeah. I'm playing a pretty significant concert here on Saturday, but I'm going to go over into Montana and do a gig or two here and there too. But yeah, so I'm here early, just enjoying the the environment. It's awesome. It's amazing.
Yaroslav, where are you from originally?
I was probably born somewhere 100 yards from Nenad, I think. I'm from the center of Zagreb. I was right under the cathedral.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you're an immigrant? You came to America as a probably young person.
Yeah, this is my dad. My dad had a pretty brilliant science career going and brought us all over in 1964.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you're living in the West, like Pacific Northwest, or you're
just visiting? I literally flew in. I'm living in Chicago. I got up and got on an airplane this morning, and I wound up on a kayak shortly after noon. It's pretty awesome.
And the concert that you're about to perform, it's a group. Like you have
it's a solo performance. My friend here was a presenter. He presents them at his home here, and he has a stunning setup. He just built this spectacular stage that looks over this, like it's a 20-mile lake going off into the mountains. But he also bought a 9-foot grand, so I'm going to be playing on that baby. Pretty awesome.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Which brand of the piano is it?
It's a Yamaha, but it's a full, I think it's the C9, whatever, the full Yamaha, and it's going to be awesome. It's great.
All 9 yards.
Yeah.
It's only hold 9 feet.
Well, I can tell you a great piano story. Thelonious Monk, when I was playing with Minkus, I met him way back in '55. He was kind of out of work at that time, to put it mildly. And one of the notorious rip-off artists that used to have a little book that he wrote about Charlie Parker that he carried around in a shopping cart. Bob Reiser, who was a great guy. He kept ringing my doorbell. I said, Bob, I bought 3 copies every time you come by. I've already got 3. You come 3 times, I bought 3 copies. He said, no, this time. He said, you don't have to buy the copy. He said, I'm doing a concert and having Thelonious come down to the village and play. I said, at the Vanguard, at the Village Gate. He said, no, I found an abandoned place. So nobody would hire Monk at that point. So he came down to this old place. It was like a storeroom that used to be a coffee house for a week or something. And they had a piano. And Mark said, can I see the piano? So it was in the back of the back room. It looked like a back room, the whole place. And it had a cover on it. It was all green, covered with, it looked like a penicillin factory, all this green mold. So he said, can I take that off? So he took off the penicillin covered top. And the whole piano was all like green. And he sat down, and the whole middle register was thunk, thunk, thunk. The only thing that worked was the very bottom octave and the top octave that were sort of out of tune. So he kept fumbling around until he found the notes that worked. He said, all right. And his wife sat out with a coffee can so that he wouldn't get completely ripped off. And he played incredible the whole night with this. He had long arms. You never could have played, at the bottom and top of the 88 keys. And I said, God, man, I said, you made that piano. It was like perfect. How did you do that? And he said, quote, man, I was brought up with sad pianos. Then years later, Bobby Timmons, who also lived in the village like we all did, Monk lived up the 60s, but he came down to the village a lot. And Bobby Timmons was down there, and he said, I just came back from Holland. He said, play with all these crappy pianos that I've been tuned up since they left the factory. And he said, I played everything in these big concert halls. He played on a Bechstein. And he said, man, I hit those high notes and those low notes. And he said, all you have to do is touch it. And you just found a whole world you didn't even know you were in. So thankful that you're playing on a 9-foot grand. And I think the keyboards, it's amazing how many people are playing pianos again and keyboard instruments and how beautiful they are.
Indeed. Wow.
And Radoslav Lurkovic, who's a monster great player from, also is a countryman of Nenad, who's come over here.
Right.
Just fantastic piano player. And I think his mom was like a famous concert, his family famous.
Like my grandma.
Yeah. And is Radoslav, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, man. Then I'm going to be quiet. I want to hear you. And I want to see you next week at Woody Fest.
Yes.
Hardly wait.
Are you guys are buddies going back a long way? When did you meet? Bratislava, when did you meet David?
I met David, I'm going to say 205, and I met him at the Woody Guthrie Folk Festival, and then it was like, you know what I mean, we probably
best friends forever, right?
Oh man, I mean, it's like I showed up on Wednesday. By the end of that, I think both of us logged about 200 jam hours, and that was a pretty light fest,
Yeah.
Well, the first 3 years, every time anybody wanted a hit, which was everybody, they say, get the Byrne Sisters, because they were there, and get Rad. And he played with everybody. I thought I was a workaholic. And then we go to the parking lot, and he would play nonstop. So after 3 years, the first time I saw Radoslav drinking a beer and leaning against the car without playing. I said, Rad, are you okay? I thought, maybe he was having a stroke or something. He said, no, man, I'm just taking 5. I said, oh, that was the first time I ever saw him, but he wasn't playing. He did or something. And also, Rad, a lot of people that don't know what a fantastic songwriter and singer you are. I remember when you gave me your records, I said, wow, I loved you playing so much. So I finally rented a car when I was going to Newport to do a gig. I said, now I'm going to listen to Rad's record. And then I heard all those songs that you wrote. God almighty, man, you're as great a songwriter as you are a player. And that was just very refreshing. So I could hardly wait to see you again.
Right on. Likewise. This is so nice to meet up here. This is perfect. Thank you, Nenad, for making this happen.
Amen.
You're welcome. Nenad, we're here hanging out, and tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
I have a lot of things, too many helicopters in the air. I cannot land them at the same time, but two major things are, I'm publishing the book called Ping Pong Parkinson. It started with a tremor and shaking up the world. And I just got the first print like yesterday. And that will come into on the Barnes & Noble's website. It's already there, but we have to fix something. Tomorrow will be fixed. And that's and then new album, which we'll call War Peace in 1 hour. But eventually we can, on these hangoutologies, we can play sometimes a tune or something, either live or play it from computer. It's just to break the spoken word. Anyway, that's what I'm up to. Plus hangoutology that I wanted to do for the last 10 years, and it took me 10 years to convince myself that I just have to go.
I must say, the first time I heard the word was through David Amram. David, did you start this whole concept by chance, or
what was that?
hangoutology? I know it through you.
Oh, well, I use that terminology. I forget, other people used to say that too. When people would say, Are you an ethnomusicologist? I would say, no, I'm an ethno-funkologist. So then I used to call my children, Funkenstein. And then they reminded, of course, there was the famous group where they had Dr. Funkenstein, who played the Funkadelics from years ago. So a lot of those words, come from different sources and mean different things to different people. So I would always say I was a doctor of ethno-funkology because funk is the essence, the undefined essence that's personal, humanistic, that's the core of every culture, every language, every genre of music. And that hanging out really means that you are participating and being a harmonious part of a larger experience that you could sort of by osmosis gain from. So in a certain way, the humorous definitions of just having a good time sometimes are an easy way to make people feel comfortable with the idea that maybe you could gain from experiences which are deemed by those who determine your value without ever knowing you or having any values necessarily themselves. When people with low self-esteem are in charge of how the rest of the world is supposed to be, chances are those simple, obvious, clear things that have been keeping societies together forever are overlooked or ignored or disapproved of. And in the case of hanging out or being with other people, when you go not just to Europe and South America and Asia, but right in the United States, not only in small, tiny towns, but right in the middle of a big city, on a coffee house or a block or a street corner or anywhere, you can find that that's enormously important, influential, and spiritually rewarding. But if you say all that stuff, people will say, hey, man, I don't want to hear all that academic stuff. So I think hangoutology is a cheerful way of describing unity, joy, and harmonious living at a familial sense that we all desperately need. And that's why if you understand that, then you can find a lot of joy and happiness without having to go to a guru with a limo or a psychiatrist or a cult leader or a dope dealer. Those are all fine, and they provide a certain satisfaction, especially for those who are charging you for the information they get for nothing by being with people who can show you. So that's what I think hangoutology is kind of the best way to get educated and to live. So when Rad and I were up there in the parking lot playing at Woody Fest, we weren't looking for a gig because everybody there is already looking for a gig and has a few, and which I'd always invite you anyway, but it was just the joy of doing it. I can't explain it, but it just makes you feel better, and you get better from doing it, and then you're in tune, and then you can bring that good feeling with you. And if you're with it, Jerry Mulligan told me a long time ago, when I first met him way back before I even came to New York, he said, man, one person with a good feeling can take 11 people that are all bummed out and make them feel good. So he meant in the music, as in life, you can bring something to the table. You can inspire others, and you can be with others who are inspired that will inspire you. And that's something that you don't really know, and that with the music teaches you. Duke Ellington said better than anyone. They said, what advice have you got for young musicians, Duke? And he said, listen. And for classical composers, which is really my main thing, Leonard Bernstein said the best thing to be when he made me first composer in residence with the New York Philharmonic way back in 1966. He said, David, your job in music is not only to please yourself. You you have to add something to the repertoire. In other words, you're supposed to contribute something and do a good job. And of course, that was not what you were taught in school or by reading the Sunday New York Times.
Right.
So those simple things, those old-fashioned simple things that we would consider to be cliches, bromides, or obvious, sometimes there's a reason why they've been around for the last few thousand years, because they work.
That's right. So you're the ultimate hangoutologist with Jack Kerouac, and I'm thinking of your performance for we were at a club at Joe's Pub, and Lord Buckley was the focus.
Oh, right.
And these are the kind of people that are just, these are your buddies. And what a hangout must have been like. It's just remarkable.
Well, they was, the thing is, Spooty, that they were great listeners and observers. And Jack, a lot of the time, would just be there quietly absorbing stuff. And Lord Buckley was amazing in terms of his ability to listen, not just when he spoke and made up stuff. They were so much fun to play with and to be with. And there was a lot of other people I know that weren't recognized, I guess you might say. But boy, were they something. And what all these different people shared was that ability to learn from and with and for others and to pass on what they knew. They were just wonderful, wonderful to be with. And I guess I'm just so grateful in 90 that I had a life where I was able to be with enough people who inspired me so that when I was told what a wretched, bipolar, nutcase, disgusting freak with a career death wish I was by not staying in Hollywood after I did the Manchurian Candidate and all that stuff. I was supposed to have a course for the rest of my life and then end up with the Army ghostwriters and not do anything. And, I just, wait a minute, man, I want to try and be a classical composer and a jazz player, which I've been all my life. And now at 90, following those career death wishes to the max, I recommend that to everybody. If there's something you want to do that. Even if you have to pay your rent by doing something else, don't give up what you feel you were put here to do, because that's what really gives you satisfaction. And you meet so many wonderful people that's something you can't buy. When I go and see Rad at Okima, I just was corresponding with someone today. I mean, there's a little place that Woody Guthrie came from. Everybody goes for their expenses if they're lucky. And still, it's just an amazing experience. And when I play Farm Aid every year with Willie Nelson, we don't get paid for that either. And I just have to make a living to support my grandson now. And, I have responsibilities and all that stuff. But a lot of those things that I do, people say, well, how come you're doing that? I said, man, it makes me feel so good. I just can't describe it. And I only say that because if something makes you feel happy and rewarded and fulfilled, you can't buy that. And if you could, all those people we see on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and the great billionaires who exist would be deliriously happy because they can afford to buy that stuff. And you can't buy that, not because you're a bad person and you have enough money to buy it. That would be great. Ooh, what a party we'd have. However, you could feel the best stuff in life really isn't for sale. They had that wonderful song, Love's for Sale, but essentially that was talking about from the point of view of what it was like being a prostitute or a purveyor, and that was sort of sad, heartbreaking, because the reality is it ain't for sale. And I only say that not meaning the sales are bad, but that there's the most beautiful things in life generally are free and small and personal and give you some happiness. And of course, if you think that way, then you're a menace to the whole society because you don't want to buy that much crap, and therefore you're a threat to the consumer industry. And I honestly think, I spoke to a guy in an ad agency. I said, man, you guys are such geniuses that when you watch television, you don't care about the program. You want to wait to see that Geico ad or whatever it is. I said, it's a shame because if you weren't around, the whole culture might collapse if people didn't feel needy. And he said, no, we could sell anything, but if we have something good to sell, she said, great, you don't even need to advertise. He said, if we advertised just what was really valuable, we'd have like a paradise because we know how to do that. And I thought about that. I said, wow, isn't that something? So I think now, to answer the question you asked a long time ago, younger people, who have this wonderful technology are enabled to get things of beauty in music, art, poetry, cooking, dancing, and child rearing and carpentry and anything. You can actually get a lot of terrific information through that magic of technology, and that's a wonderful thing. That's not why the technology's developed. And I'm sure that they're sending those people up to Mars so they can do mining and real estate, God knows what. However, that doesn't mean that because of the desire of some people to do this miraculous stuff, that it's a waste of time or it's not a whole magnificent world that we know nothing about that's out there in space, but because of the fact that why we're doing that, why that's being done, why all that money's being put into that is not because they want to expand human awareness and make the world a better place, but to open up new markets. But that's okay too, because when the settlers, so-called settlers, came and discovered America, where they've been 50,000 years of civilization before we got here, known as the native peoples, thousands of languages and cultures of peoples. That was here, but it was great that all those people like Columbus came over there if they were looking for gold or for stuff, because they introduced a lot of people in the world to other places. Then you go to a country like Iceland, where I was, and I was amazed by how many people from Denmark, which is a pretty chilly country, were coming in the wintertime to Iceland. I figured, man, why don't they go to the Bahamas or somewhere or Florida where it's hot? They said, no, they're coming here for the roots. I said, what? And they said, yes, in the 1100s, 1200s, those genius seamen that came all the way from Denmark in those boats and somehow found their way over were also poets and writers, and they took the old language and the old poetry, wrote it and spoke it, and they still have the same language that they did 600, 700, 800 years ago. And the people who want to speak Dansk, the native language, go to Iceland to check out their roots. How about that stuff?
Yeah, that's something.
So they didn't have to go to outer space to find something of value. They brought that culture with them. And that's kind of what we do in music and in life, and you do that. I mean, I remember meeting you at Bradley's the third week you were in New York quite a few weeks ago, 30-some years ago, whatever it was. And right away I said, man, this cat, I knew, and I didn't know even where Croatia was. And when I met Rad, I didn't know he was in there, but I could tell after 5 minutes, I said, man, this is a heavy person.
It was first week in the US. It was in 1984, October, first week of October.
Wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
36 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Nenad, God, the two of you, have you ever invited David to come to Croatia? He should check the scene out. David, have you been to Croatia?
No, the closest I learned was learning the wrong song. Vingo, Vingo, Charity Day. And I was saying that for a Czech, the Czech Symphony came, and they did something. And so I said, I thought, well, I would impress
Pretty
them.
close.
I thought I would impress them, with a cultured person. I wish I were. And he said, that's very touching, but that's the wrong song. I said, oh, excuse me.
It's never too late, or non è mai troppo tardi, say Italians.
Yeah.
Except it's too late to come home early. Except that. But it's never too late to visit Croatia.
But they had a great orchestra, and they were playing. I remember they were playing Dvorak, and I said to them, "How is it so nice you could come to America?" They said, "How have you had a good time traveling?" They said, "The bus." They were spent the whole time in America on bus rides around the country. Going from one place to another, sleeping on the bus most of the time. And the only other time I experienced that was I was on a show about a celebratory show about the 1950s, and I had a very ironic song called "The Fabulous 50s," talking about the horrors of being in the army and Senator McCarthy and all that stuff. And they said, now we're going to interview some of the great, they had chubby checkers and all these people on. They said, now we're going to interview Fabian, the legendary, he's still on the road. So they called him and said, Fabian, can you tell us about the 50s? What you remember? He said, the bus. That was it. They said, well, Fabian, could you say more? I said, all I remember, I'm still on it. The bus. So I saw poor Fabian, he'd been on a bus for 40 or 50 years, and the poor members of the Czech Philharmonic, they were on the bus as well.
Well, David, you have to get on that bus over to Zagreb and to the Dalmatian coast. And your manager, Doug, has to bring you along. The two of you would be great.
Well, the world's a big place, and I think, eventually, since I'm only 90, I'm still a work in progress. I say in the next 30 years, at the rate I'm going, I'll probably be able to go just about every place. And if I don't, I'll go someplace else, and wherever I didn't go, someone else will, and the world will be terrific anyway. Once you see that, then you can get over your sense of inadequacy, because you realize there's a whole lot of other folks that got something to offer as well. And you can kind of enjoy other people and realize your own insignificance, and then you can do something valuable. So when people say to me, man, how come you're 90 years old, you still got that energy, you're so enthusiastic? I say, well, desperation is very stimulating.
Well, you need more hangout targets, David.
Oh, I know.
Europe is on your horizon. I mean, do you have something with Germany coming up?
Playing in Karlsruhe, they had me go over when I did the music for Terry McLuhan's film about the Bajak Khan. That was just wonderful. And they invited me back, and I played some jazz concerts there. And then I did I conducted the Schubert Symphony with their local orchestra and A Peace of Mind. And they had an old evening of my chamber music. And now they're having me come back to be the host, pardon me, of the film Splendor of the Grass, which I was lucky enough to write the music for way back in 1960. And in addition, and I'm doing that auf Deutsch, weil ich kann Deutsch sprechen. Glücklicherweise. So I Straße in Frankfurt, where I haven't been lately. Last time I played there was 65 years ago when I was in the Army with Albert Mengelsdorf, and we had a little group. And then he became a famous trombone player, and I played with his brother, Emil, who's still alive, who's terrific. And I'm going to go back and play the Jazzkeller for the first time in 65 years and do that. And these are all just amazing flukes. like everything else in my life, including meeting Nemeth 40-some years ago, and you, and Radosław Lolkovic, just both these great people. And in this case, I was just lucky enough to play in Frankfurt, and now, 65 years later, I'm going back again. So for all your listeners who are 23 years old, told that you're washed up, people have a right to tell you that. Chances are they never even got close enough to the towels and soap to get washed up or washed down. And if you're doing something you love to do, then just go ahead and do it. And remember what Charlie Mingus told me. We were playing at the Cafe Bohemia, out-of-tune piano, one microphone, managed by a thuggish cat who would leap over the bar and beat up the customers if he didn't like their attitude. And Mingus said, man, quote, no matter how ratty the joint, every night with me is Carnegie Hall. And he told me that in 1955, and I never forgot it. And that's well, once you see that, then you can just do your very best all the time. And if you really mess up, you say, well, try and do better the next time.
They say that the world is small, but I would like to paint it. So anyway, by traveling around the world, I went twice around the world, and what I learned is this order of magnitude, ratios between things, distances, but the desires and memories are the same of people. Pretty much all over the world. Every thought that we have is either desire or memory, and most of the people have very similar desires and memories.
Amen.
Amen to that.
You know, it was staggering how similar we all are. That's not some new age leftist philosophy. That's just reality. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we're also fortunate to be in this country where the Native American people, or American Indians as they were called for so long, really showed us that with all the thousands of different nations, they didn't call themselves tribes, that one thing that they shared was they realized that there's some kind of a force out there, whether it's the great creator or whatever you want to call it, that's bigger than us, the great unknown. We'll never understand it. But when we go out and we see a sunset and see it rain and see the sunshine and see the leaves come up and then that changes and the snow comes down and you figure, oh man, it's all over. And then that magnificent summertime comes again. All of these things, these incredibly beautiful things, are a gift to us. We don't own, we didn't create that. That's a gift. And we're here to share that for a while and be gifted by that. And we have to think of it that way. Once you start thinking of it that way, rather than I'm going to strip mine, everything, take it, sell it for 5 times as much and buy something else. Once you get past that idea and think more just of appreciating what the hell you have at that second and how precious that and your family and all living things are and other people, boy, then you can really, among other things, enjoy life to an extent. At least have 5 minutes of pleasure a day. That's pretty simplistic and obvious to a lot of people, but that's the way it is. And this is one of the places in the world that we could learn that. One of the people that taught me so much was Vine Deloria. I played with Floyd Rickwell Western for 40 years, and Vine was his buddy too, and who wrote God is Red and all those things. And Vine said, he said, our spirituality, our religions, he said, they've taken our natural resources, our names, our dress, our land. The only thing they haven't been able to steal is our spirituality, because it's too simple. I said, whoa. So we're living in a place where they have indigenous people, and that's something everybody can appreciate. And the fact that we're here, and that when Pete Seeger told me, he's a I never realized he was a Mayflower descendant. I almost passed out when he told me that. He said, no. He said, my forebears came here. He said, they weren't asked, where do you come from? How much money did your father make? How do you pray? What was your job before you came here? They were just welcomed. And he said he got through that first winter, then they were shown how to plant stuff the next spring. He said they were treated with hospitality in the civilized way. He said what we did in exchange was disgraceful. Then he said, however, feeling guilty is a waste of time and a self-indulgence. But doing something for others and for other people who are coming here and reciprocating how we were treated when we came here by being gracious and hospitable, he said, that's a big thing. Even if you just do it 5 minutes a week, and he said that everybody can do that. Just a thought.
Just to announce that maybe we have 10 more minutes. We'll wrap up the first HANGOUTOLOGY, number 1, just that everybody knows.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was very powerful, David.
Yes, that's leadership by example. Just don't as you said, self-indulgence is what was the word? Not sympathy, but you said, what is self-indulgence?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, David, would you phrase that about there's no time for self-indulgence, or it's of no use?
Oh, no, he just said, no, what he said was, he said, feeling guilty is a waste of time and a self-indulgence.
Yeah, that's
I said, wow, he was so evolved, and it was a Boston, what they would call a blue blood, the social climber's dream. He was from that, but somehow he or her family remembered to say please and thank you, and he was grateful to be in this beautiful place. So I'd say for all the people listening who turn on network television and get disgusted, which is a good reaction to what a lot of things that are happening. Well, instead of being disgusted and depressed and saying I despise this place, maybe we can find some tiny way to make it a little better. And so we can think about that.
Yes, but because guilt by itself does nothing, actually.
Yeah, and the way to make it better is for what we do, if we're encouraging or whatever we're doing, or working in a grocery store or a gas station or whatever you're doing, try to see if we can do that a little better than is expected and be gracious to other people.
Just feeling guilty is an excuse of doing nothing.
Yeah.
But to do something that's much more valuable than guilt.
And then you get into that real Buddhist philosophy, which if you see something really disgusting, then you say, well, that person is showing me that disgusting part of my DNA, but it can be controlled. So when you feel an attack of disgustingness creeping up inside you, you can say, wait a minute, man, better cool that out, because that's a drag. And the reason you know it's a drag is because when you're on the receiving end of that, you can see what a drag it is. So rather than getting revenge and saying, now it's my turn to dump on you, you can say, wait a minute, I don't want to be that way. So it's possible to alleviate the situation by not following bad examples. So I say hooray for freedom of expression, and all the disgusting stuff that we see happening only shows us, well, that's human beings too, but also those mental illnesses can be cured.
Yeah. Well, on that beautiful thought, I think maybe we should wrap it up for the first time. I appreciate Needy for helping to put this together. Thank you, David, for your wise words. Thank you, Jamie, for being present. Michael, Radoslav, and everybody who is listening. That's very, very precious to me, and I think it will be precious for generations to listen to this. So,
really happy to be part of this, and I think as you host the rooms more regularly, I think more people will come in. I think something is there with the algorithm where, like, I noticed previously with rooms, we'd have a lot of random people jump in, but it seems like the algorithm's shifted. So I think it helps to consistently hold the rooms and keep pinging in friends, which is just hitting the plus sign and pinging in whoever you're friends with. I'm really excited to learn more from both of you, and just, thank you for everything.
Yeah, we will post this on YouTube, and you will find other channels. So these